Synopsis of the Books of the Bible. Ezra. By JND Darby. All Scripture is given by inspiration of God, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. 2 Timothy 3 verses 16 and 17. Synopsis of the Books of the Bible. By John Nelson Darby. Ezra, chapter 3. The altar built, the word followed. In the 7th month, see note, the children of Israel gathered themselves together at Jerusalem, each one going up from the place where he dwelt. The first thing which they do there, under the direction of Joshua and Zerubbabel, is to build the altar, to place themselves under the wings of the God of Israel, the sole help and sole protector of his people, for fear was upon them because of the people of those countries. Their refuge is in God. Beautiful testimony of faith. Precious effect of the state of trial and abasement they were in. Surrounded by enemies, the unwalled city is protected by the altar of her God, directed by the faith of God's people, and she is in greater security than when she had her kings and her walls. Faith, strict in following the word, confides in the goodness of its God. This exactness in following the word characterized the Jews, at this time, in several respects. We have seen it, chapter 2 verses 59 to 63, where some could not show their genealogy. We find it again here, chapter 3 verse 2, and again in verse 4, on the occasion of the Feast of Tabernacles. Customs, traditions, all were lost. They were very careful not to follow the ways of Babylon. What had they left except the word? A condition like this gave it its full power. All this takes place before the house is built. It was faith seeking the will of God, although far from having set everything in order. We find, then, no attempt at doing without God those things which required a discernment that they did not possess. But with touching faith these Jews exercise piety towards God, worship God, and, as we may say, set him in their midst, rendering him that which duty required. They acknowledged God by faith, but until the Urim and Thummim should be there, they placed no one, on God's part, with the object of giving some competency to act for him, in a position which required the exercise of God's authority. Note. This was the month in which the blowing of trumpets took place, a figure of the restoration of Israel in the last days. End of note. The foundations of the temple laid with joy and tears. Having at length brought together the materials which the king of Persia had granted them, the Jews begin to build the temple and lay its foundations. The joy of the people, generally, was great. This was natural and right. They praise Jehovah according to the ordinance of David, and sing, "How well it became them now to do so. His mercy endures forever." Nevertheless, the ancient men wept, for they had seen the former house, built according to the inspired direction of God. Alas! We understand this. He who now thinks of what the assembly, see Acts 2 and 4, of God was at the first will understand the tears of these old men. This suited nearness to God. Farther off, it was right that joy, or at least the confused shout, which only proclaimed the public event, should be heard, for, in truth, God had interposed in his people's behalf. Joy was in his presence and acceptable. Tears confessed the truth and testified a just sense of what God had been for his people, and of the blessing they had once enjoyed under his hand. Tears recognized, alas, that which the people of God had been for God, and these tears were acceptable to him. The weeping could not be discerned from the shout of joy. This was a truthful result, natural and sad, yet becoming in the presence of God. For he rejoices in the joy of his people, and he understands their tears. It was, indeed, a true expression of the state of things,